And welcome back once again to Capitol Tonight. Occupy Albany marked a full week at Academy Park today, and while that is not even a quarter of the time that occupiers have been camped out down in Manhattan's Zuccotti Park, they have still made quite a splash here in the capital city. The mini settlement across from the Capitol has even been dubbed Cuomoville, drawing attention to the protesters' dissatisfaction with the governor's economic policies. My next guests have witnessed the protesters set up camp and also making their case in and around the Capitol. It is time for our Reporter Roundtable. With me this week, we have Yancey Roy from Newsday, Karen DeWitt from New York State Public Radio, and our own Nick Reisman and John Campbell from Gannett. Thank you very much for being here, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, in fact, we're not going to start with Occupy Wall Street, though. We will get to that in a second. I do want to start with something a little bit newer. I did speak about it on the show last night. It is Andrew Cuomo's speech at the Empire State Pride Agenda Gala. He went national, which is a surprise. Nick, you remember what he said.
Yeah, he's, so far, and we should put this in the context of, when the same-sex marriage bill passed the Senate, he kind of indicated that this was a New York issue, that this was something that was just kind of contained within New York. However, last night at the Empire State Pride Agenda dinner, he suggested this needs to go to all the other states that so far have not legalized same-sex marriage. And he even included a not-so-veiled shot at President Obama, who has said that he's in favor of civil unions for same-sex couples, but not full-fledged gay marriage. And he even quoted the president when the president gave a speech saying that the arc of history usually bends towards justice. He said you have to bend that arc yourself.
To your will, like the Hulk.
Which totally goes to exactly what Andrew Cuomo feels like he did for same-sex marriage.
Yeah, I thought he was pretty definitive. He said we need marriage equality in every state, and it was interesting to see him insert himself into the national debate, because as we know, he's tried to keep out of the national debate. I mean, he doesn't do national interviews. He doesn't even really do TV interviews in New York State.
The state. He doesn't even leave.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting to see that this is the first issue that I can see that he's chosen to kind of put himself front and center.
Well, even at times at press conferences where folks have tried to draw him into a discussion about a national issue, it's usually focusing on New York. So it is a curious strategy that this is the first issue that he's going to try to sort of step out with.
It wasn't just gay marriage, too. It was also, he called for repeal of the Defense of Marriage Act, the federal, and also for anti-discriminatory laws, anti-bullying laws against LGBT community members.
Okay, but first of all, it is the first national issue that he has chosen to step out on. But is it really such a surprise? This is his bread and butter, right? I mean, where it comes to social justice,
the Huffington Post didn't honor him for the tax cap.
That's right.
They didn't honor him for the agreement with CSEA, right?
No.
This is the one that will garner national headlines.
But did you see, interestingly, so you're talking about the Huffington Post Game Changer of the Year award, which he was awarded. It was for his push successfully to make New York the largest state in the nation to legalize gay marriage. However, a week later, they had a headline, and it said something to the effect of, Andrew Cuomo tries to shut down Occupy Wall Street in Albany.
That's just the thing. I mean, like, what else does Andrew Cuomo have that can really fire up the Democratic base?
Nothing.
He can't say, oh, well, I didn't strip unions of collective bargaining rights, because that's like a baseline Democratic thing you don't do.
Right.
I mean, he negotiated tough contracts with the state employee labor unions.
Well, not yet.
He's threatened layoffs with one of them. Mostly, he's threatened layoffs with one of them, and he nearly achieved them. He's had a tax cap, like we mentioned. He's cut spending in education and health care. I mean, these are all issues, and he's threatened to shut down the Occupy Albany protest.
Most people across the nation don't know about that, but they do know how he got gay marriage passed in New York State. So the other stuff isn't really resonating.
Yeah, but when he runs for president, somebody is going to make an issue of all of this stuff, I'm sure.
But right now, he can choose.
No, that's true. Right now, he can choose.
What he wants to be known for.
The man's got a 70% approval rating. I mean, he's doing something right. He's playing to the left. I don't want to say he's playing to the left, but I mean, it appeals to the left.
Yeah, I think you can say he's playing to the left. I'm sorry, I think you can.
But to the right, I mean, the fiscal conservatism really plays well there, and that's why his approval ratings every single month, when we see the Quinnipiac poll, when we see the CNN poll, are through the roof.
He's cherry-picking issues right now. He's got, he can throw in his support for same-sex marriage, which, if and when he runs for president, say in, 2016, you see the attitudes of people shifting in favor of gay marriage. So odds are there's going to be a larger majority of people who support it.
But you talk about cherry-picking issues, which makes the action on the Occupy Albany version of Occupy Wall Street all that more curious. Right. The administration had inserted itself into that story. It was a story that was not getting a lot of attention until it came out that the administration tried to enforce a curfew on the protesters at the park.
Well, switched the curfew actually first, which was weird.
Or came up with one late.
Yeah, whatever.
Well, that's part of the problem, is that there's so much confusion about what happened, and it all doesn't sound very good for the governor, because it sounds like they were trying to kick the protesters out of the park last Friday night.
Hold 1 second. You guys were all at the protest, right? Everybody was there, on the second floor of the Capitol, yes? Governor 1%. I mean, he wasn't there. But that's got to be, I mean, saying that people aren't hearing it nationally, and that's true, but although Huffington Post is a national institution, the New York Times covered it, right? Albeit not in the print version, I don't think, online, right? So that is something, and it's true, you're right, John, that the national polls, or rather the statewide polls, are not showing it. But how long might that continue? Maybe in perpetuity.
That's a big question.
I do not.
It's like, how much is Occupy, at least in New York State, going to become about Cuomo and about his opposition to renewing this millionaire's tax? I think that's got to be a worry for him.
And that's the thing, and that's why that handling of it by the Cuomo administration was, quite frankly, extremely clumsy. Because it was, with all due respect to the protesters, it was a local story at Occupy Albany, and it became a statewide story with possibly even national implications when he inserted himself into this debate. I mean, that protest, again, wasn't the largest that we've seen at the Capitol even this year. I think there were larger ones, noisier ones during the budget.
And gay marriage.
And gay marriage, much but this became much more of a story because of Andrew Cuomo.
But on the other hand, if you were going to shut it down, last Friday night would have been the time, because they'd only been there a few hours. People might not have heard about it on Saturday morning and Saturday.
And now he's galvanized.
And once you miss that day, you cannot shut them down.
And now it's become a matter of galvanizing them, too. They've found a common enemy, and it's Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah, so it's really kind of gotten a bit out of control for him.
He missed his opportunity. I think what he was trying to do was take advantage of the opportunity to really put it out before it grew into anything, and since then it has grown into something. And if it stays here through the budget season, through legislative session, it's only going to continue growing.
They claim that they're going to, but with the snow predicted for this weekend, that's going to be the real test. Are those tents going to be standing?
Yeah, but people do winter camping. I mean, it's not so outside the realm of possibility.
It's usually just for a weekend.
Yeah, it's true. But they are. The way that they're working it at Occupy Albany is a little bit different than it has been, my understanding, in Zuccotti Park, which is that people are coming in, they're going out, there's a few stalwarts, and some people are staying for the weekend, some people are staying for the evening, so they're like doing it in shifts.
I think you're right. Not everybody stays all night every night, but they keep the tents up.
Yeah.
I think what it also revealed was, and this is something just, that we've seen covering the administration, is that they're very sensitive about criticism. They are, I know, shocking, right?
Wow.
But they are very quick to respond to something that they deem to be a negative blog post or article or news story or whatever. And this is, I just think, another example of just how sensitive they tend to be.
Yeah, I just want to make, I want to talk about hydrofracking, but I also want to note he's made a lot of local endorsements lately. I know he started with Steve Ballone, I think, out on Long Island. Am I right about that?
Right.
And he's the Suffolk County Democratic?
He is the candidate for the Suffolk County Executive, going against Angie Carpenter, the Republican, and with a week or so to go, it's not exactly clear how that race is going to turn out. He's also made an endorsement out in Buffalo for the county executive out there. It's kind of, all of these are a little bit late kind of in the campaign season, but he is getting out to endorse some Democrats around the state.
By press release, right? He is not yet. He did make an appearance on behalf of Ballone. That's why I'm bringing it up, because I think that's the only person that he had a fundraiser for, and it was a closed press, not public event. I know that there's been, I think he endorsed Brennan in
Brennan in
Binghamton.
Broome County in his tough race against Debbie Preston.
Right, but none of these things, it's just interesting to me from a political standpoint, careful, right? The way that it seems to me that they're very careful about their media strategy, careful about their political strategy.
And also who they associate with, who they put their endorsement
They don't
on.
want anybody to damage the Cuomo brand,
which
is understandable.
Indeed. So we're still waiting to see if he makes any. And also, last-minute push by the governor, who's so dramatically popular, as you say, John, could really sway a tight race, potentially. We have yet to see. It's November 8th is the general. So I also wanted to touch on this, and John, I'm going to ask you, because you've been doing such great work on this hydrofracking. The governor said today in an interview with you, actually, Karen, that he doesn't believe that the DEC is actually slowing anything down. They're just being careful.
Yeah, well, he said they weren't slowing down, and neither were they fast-tracking the
I don't know
process
what
when
that means.
people were criticizing them. But he did say that he wants to slow the discussion down because it's become too emotional. So,
I mean, we had listened to Commissioner Joe Martinez, the DEC commissioner, on, I believe it was Wednesday, Tuesday, maybe.
Yeah.
He was asked point blank, do you think any permits are going to be issued, any hydrofracking permits are going to be issued in 2012? And he said, it's hard to predict. We've got a lot of work to do. And
Which is sort of like no.
Well, and in the past, when he's been asked that, he said, you can't really say, but we're working toward 2012.
It was the biggest hedge he's taken.
There was definitely
absolutely.
A change in sort of the message out there. And it seemed like they're going to go slower now, and it seems like they're reacting to a lot of criticism and a lot
huge amount of criticism.
The main,
it may not be a huge part of the population, but there's a significant part of the population that's very worried about this and very vocal about this.
Well, and the big thing too that is kind of contributing to this hedge is this advisory panel that has 18 environmentalists and industry representatives and local government reps. They are charged with coming up with a fee structure to pay for additional staff for DC, for DOH, for Department of Health, for Public Service Commission, Department of Transportation, all of these agencies that are going to be affected in some way.
This is so Cuomonian, which is so amazing to me, that you take all the disparate people, and they did it with Medicaid too, and you put them all at the same table. The only problem is that these guys don't seem to be able to come to any kind of agreement.
Essentially, I mean, they say, the panel members say that they're getting along well, that it's working well, but they have detailed estimates from the DEC. The DEC says next year, or the first year that hydrofracking is allowed, they need 140 new staffers and 226 by the fifth year. They don't have those types of estimates from DOH and the Public Service Commission, and that's what they say they're waiting
What's
for.
important, too, these fees now are not going to be in the state budget. These fees they
Right.
collect from the gas dealers, and that means the budget process is not going to drive fracking, which some of the
Make it
environmental...
quick, because we're almost out of
Just to
time.
make one quick point,
Yes.
this advisory panel has been meeting behind closed doors,
Right.
has been meeting privately, and we're only getting an idea of what was discussed after the fact, and it's usually something that comes, within several hours before the meeting is going to take place, that, the commissioner is going to be available to talk. I understand that they want some sort of open and free dialogue during these committee
This is
hearings.
a good time, and unfortunately we're out of time, but this is a good time to note that the governor, until 3 days ago, I think, was saying that he was on his public schedule, and they are touting their transparency, was saying that he was going to be in the New York City area, which could be that he was in Jersey. I mean, I don't really know what that means. I don't know why they're doing it, and we're going to have to talk about it again next week because it's really bizarre. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Karen DeWitt, thank you. Yancey Roy, thank you. John Campbell and Nick Reisman, thanks very much for being me, guys. I'll see you next time.